man, I hate my job. I want to do what you do. I'm like, cool. Well, let's start doing it. Let's put a plan in place. You can quit your job and start doing this. And like, well, I don't want to give up my job. I'm like, okay, well, am I hearing you right? I'm like, you don't want to give up something that you already say that you hate for something that you want.
Kris Krohn here. Welcome back to the Kris Krohn Show. And today I'm talking to Rich Summers, fellow real estate investor, but he's definitely doing it different. He's got $60 million in his portfolio and he's climbing the charts fast. He's got a lot of multifamily, but he's playing some different games. But what's interesting is that he comes from an 11-year history on a government job, playing the whole pension 401k game. And those dudes normally don't go the real estate entrepreneurial route. So Rich, dude, welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Kris, pleasure thanks for having me out, man. This is an impressive setup you got here. I've never been a Provo, and dude, everyone on your team has been amazing so far. So thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate it. So can we just start with the elephant in the room? Like, government employees are kind of crotchety, unhappy, miserable souls. Like, I don't know. I've never messed with an IRS agent, or you see someone in air traffic control where you come from. Like, in general, government is not exactly like where happy people go to like live a life.
Yeah, and then you couple in the fact it's air traffic control, which is like one of the highest suicide rate jobs in America.
Because?
Just because it's high stress. And so you do have some folks in the room that, are a little bit down, a little bit unpleasant to work with if you would. However, a lot of my investors are air traffic controllers, a lot of my little coworkers. And so a lot of those folks have been great to me, and they're the ones that have really helped propel me to where I am today.
Tell me a little bit about why it's such a high suicide. Like, what makes it stressful?
Yeah, because you literally have a bunch of lives in your hands. So I did radar. I worked at LA Center and I worked at SoCal Approach.
Is this like in the movies when you're like watching the plane and it's going for the other plane and you're like,
yes.
Oh no, like Victor Vector, we've got to get them to change their thingy? Or
that's exactly what it is. And so I worked at SoCal Approach, which is actually the busiest air traffic facility in the world in terms of airplanes per day. They rerun all of Southern California, LAX, Long Beach, John Wayne, San Diego, all the little airports in between.
Wow.
And so at any given time, you could have 20, 30 airplanes in a small area. You're on a radar scope. You're talking on the planes, climb, maintain, descend and maintain, turn left, turn right. You're issuing speeds. And everyone's going in different directions. And the biggest challenge is all these planes are doing different speeds. You fly private, so you get it. Yeah. But we got private jets, we got air carriers, we got Cessnas, military. And so all these planes are doing different performance types. Yeah. And so it makes it a little bit complex and challenging. And then you throw in the mountains and the weather. And we definitely see some interesting stuff.
I want to know, like, worst day in those 11 years in that game?
So for me, I got lucky. I didn't have anything crazy, but I did have some accidents. So I was working a jump plane one time. This is out of Mesquite, Nevada. They have a little jump zone up there just north of the Vegas airport. Yeah. And they just go up all day, 14,000 feet. They throw the jumpers out. And we tell the pilots, let us know when you're 2 minutes prior to throwing the jumpers out, and we'll look to see if there's any traffic below. So they call 2 minutes prior, and there's a bunch of planes I'm not talking to flying below the jump zone. And so I say, hold the jumpers. And so he holds 5-6 minutes. There's still a lot of planes going through. And he's like, hey, we're jumpers away. So they're running out of fuel because these guys climb up minimum fuel to get up because they want to be light.
Yeah.
And so turns out this guy loses an engine on the way down.
No way.
And crashes into a golf course, flips the plane over, totals the entire plane. They pulled me out after the session. They said, hey, we're going to drug test you. This guy crashed.
Oh my gosh.
They want to make sure that, they pull the tapes. They want to make sure that all your language.
Did the guy live?
The guy lived. He went to the hospital. He's fine.
Oh.
The jumpers were fine. But lesson is, these guys take off with minimum fuel because they want to be light and maximize the amount of passengers they can bring up. So if there is, planes or traffic, sometimes they got to throw them out and go. And that's what happened.
Dude, tell me this. Like, the reason why I say it's strange to see government employee kind of turned entrepreneur is because entrepreneur is a game of freedom. It's just like, I make my own rules. I set my own schedule. If I want to hustle, if I want to be lazy, like, it's all on me.
Yep.
But, government is nothing but regulation. It's just like there's 1,001 rules and ways to be. What caused the switchover from, hey, I'm a government employee, and if I do this long enough, there will be pension, et cetera. There are not a lot of things out there that still offer pension, right?
No.
So why the switch?
So I was taught from a young age, like most folks, to go to school, get good grades, go to college, and get a job. Yeah. For the most part, that's what I did. I did everything that society says, and they say, play it safe, diversify, invest in your 401k. And I maxed out my 401k for 11 years. Wow. And yes, it grows, but it's never going to truly make you wealthy. I had about $300,000 in there after 11 years of maxing it out.
So you did max that out. Like
I
how
did
much
max it out.
how much were you contributing a year?
I did the max, which was when I first started, it was like 17.5, and each year it'd go up 18, 19, and now I think it's like 21, and then I would get the government match. So all in, I was putting about $25,000 a year.
That's a lot higher match than most companies actually allow. So had you played that game out for 30 whatever years before pension kicks in, you may have had $1 million.
Yes. Yeah. And so I just, I woke up one day, literally, I didn't know entrepreneurship, real estate investing was even an option. I was in the break room one day in between work and traffic, and one of my coworkers was talking about how he just bought a fourplex in Cleveland. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I said, how did you do that?
Why did you think that was the coolest thing ever?
Because I thought, man, this guy's buying a small apartment building while he's working air traffic to get some passive income. And I thought, man, I want to see if I can do that. I never was taught passive income.
Yeah.
And so he goes, go read this book. And it was the Blue Book by Brandon Turner on real estate investing. So I went and read it. And then I just became obsessed. I started reading more books. I started listening to podcasts. I started going to real estate networking events.
But can I ask, though, what was creating the obsession for you? Like, what was it happening in this life versus the one that you wanted to create?
To be honest with you, after I read the Blue Book, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. And that was the first time I ever learned about passive income and building businesses and buying real estate that produces cash flow. And I thought, dude, I've been doing it wrong this whole time. And so I was like, I need to figure this out. And I literally just became obsessed for 9 months straight.
Yeah, but bro, you ran out of $300,000 in your 401k, right? Like, how did you start investing?
So 9 months in, I was studying, going to networking events before I owned real estate. And I was like, all I did was study. And I was very prepared. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do multifamily. I'm going to skip the single family stuff. I'm going to do multifamily. And I cashed out the 401k to do the first deal. That was basically all the money I had. That was my net worth, right? And so.
And your job allowed you to take out your 401k to do this?
They don't allow you to take it all out. So what you got to do is what's called a hardship withdrawal, right? And so
isn't that like maxed out at like 50K?
No, that's if you take a loan. So you can either take a loan and borrow against your 401k.
So you did it. You filed for a hardship and got all of it.
I got all of it except for the government match.
Yeah.
So they said you can take it all out except for the government match.
So was that like 150K or something? Or
it was like 2 something.
Okay.
And then you got to pay the penalties. So you pay a 10% penalty to the Fed, a 2.5% penalty to the state of California. It's a penalty just for investing in the 401k to begin with.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'll just say real quick off the top. Think about in putting your money into a checking account with a local credit union or a bank, and then you go to withdraw your money and they say, hey, we're going to take a 10% penalty just for putting your money here.
Yeah.
Think about that. How is that normal?
It's not. I mean, I honestly think that people are treated like they're so dumb that you should give everyone your money, right? You give it to your financial planner, you give it to your CPA in the form of an IRA, you give it to your company in the form of getting the match, your 401k. And all of these perform at single digit, which means the average person come retirement will always fall short. The average person has $245,000 in their 401k at retirement. And that's actually with IRA combined, right? So you were tracking because you were maxing it out, you were really using it as a vehicle, and the best is what you could get it at. But even then, it's like, let's say that you had $2 million.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You're going to annuitize that with a financial planner. They're going to, based on the 4% rule, end up giving you, on $2 million, you're probably going to have somewhere around $5,000 or $6,000 a month.
Yeah, it's $80,000 a year.
Yeah.
And what you said, the number that's at average, was it 254?
Yeah.
The median, I guarantee that's a lot lower.
Oh,
than
it's like
average.
60,000.
Yeah, it's a broken system.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna do the 4% rule off of 60,000, what is that a year? You're gonna live
Nothing.
off 28,000 a year.
And
then you're gonna pay income taxes on the 28,000 a year.
Yeah. It makes no sense.
Good luck.
So you figured all that out. You went to the events. You read these books and just basically said, "I'm out. I'm done. I'm cashing out." And how much of that money, the 200 whatever thousand, did you put into your first deal?
Yeah, so my first deal was 11 unit building in Cincinnati, C-class multifamily deal. It had all the problems. It had hookers, it had drug dealers. I bought it for $350,000. I put about $75,000 down, put about $40,000 into renovating the units, fix it up. We raised the rents. I did a cash out refi about 18 months later. It appraised for about $600K, pulled all my down payment out and then some. And shortly after that, I took the rest of my 401k money and I did a JV on a 32-unit building in Indianapolis. And those are my first 2 deals. 2 years later, took that Indianapolis deal from 1.1 to 3.1, sold it, did a 1031 exchange. While I was doing those 2 deals, I started a multifamily podcast. I started raising private capital and I started taking down bigger deals, and I just kept going.
So let's talk real quick about single family versus multi, because
Sure.
there's a benefit in multi that's really cool. I have a hard time getting multi to produce a consistent ROI on rents the way I can in single family. And most people do multifamily because they can't figure out how to scale single family. So it just seems like a headache. I wanted to be different. Everyone wants to be special. My version of niching down to be special was, I'll just scale into thousands of single families, but I'll learn how to do it.
Sure.
But in your game, you have the opportunity in multifamily to do a little bit different, because if you add value, then you can reappraise the property significantly higher. And it sounds like that's part of your strategy.
That is. Every deal I've done to date, I've been able to buy at a discount and add tremendous value and either refi my money out or sell for a nice profit and then do a 1031. So that's kind of been my model thus far. And, it's funny because going in, a lot of folks think, okay, I don't have the money to invest in real estate. But what they don't realize is, there's creative ways to get financing, and there's creative ways to add a lot of equity and pull your money back out.
So you've turned your money a number of times, and now you've got a portfolio of around $60 million.
Yes.
And you're just continuing to go, and you're humming.
My net worth when I started, and this is in 2019, when I was in the break room and my coworker bought a fourplex in Cleveland, my net worth was about $350,000.
Which was mostly that 401k.
And today it's $8 million.
Yeah.
Do you know what my net worth would have been if I just continued down that path for 25 years? Like you said, it'd probably been about $1 million, $1.5 million. For most people, that sounds great, but
not when you do the math. Everyone's like, dude, I'd love to be a millionaire at retirement.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is to have $1 million bucks.
11 years of maxing out the 401k, playing it safe, diversifying, doing exactly what the system says. Yeah. I had a $350,000 net worth. In the last 4 years, it went from the 350 to the $8 million.
Worst deal where everything went wrong. Have you had one of those yet?
Yeah, dude. Every deal I've had, they never go as planned. There's always mistakes. One of them is this. There was that 32-unit building in Indianapolis. It's the second deal I ever did. C-class property, but in a decent neighborhood. We showed up at the inspection. There was hookers. There was drug dealers on site. We started renovating all the units, and COVID hit. And literally our occupancy dropped to like 60%. Yeah. And we were bleeding cash. We weren't leasing up the units. We were literally running out of money. And we're like, what are we going to do?
Can we just pause for a moment? Because I have no idea how the story, I've never heard this, right? But I just want to pause and I want to make a prediction.
Yeah.
If you hold on to real estate, if you do the right strategy and you hold on to it long enough, when it's all done and the story is over, you didn't just learn something, you made money.
100%.
Right. So I just had to pause and say that because you've got a great setup here for an awful story. Mm-hmm. What happened?
So I get together with my two partners that we JV'd with. COVID had just dropped. There's like lockdowns everywhere. We're not leasing up the units. We're at 60% occupancy. We're bleeding cash. We're out of money. We're like, what are we going to do? And so we sat down. We had some meetings and we're like, we got creative. And we figured out a way to bring in a private loan. And it gave us the capital we needed at 6% interest only to get through the renovations. We got creative. We went on Facebook Marketplace and we started driving leads to lease out our own units, even though we had a property management company. And we started driving all these leads. We started leasing up the units.
You single-handedly said, we will fill up the unit.
Yeah, out of state too.
Yeah.
We went on Facebook Marketplace. We created all of these listings, went on Craigslist, and we just got hundreds of leads of people that wanted to lease out units. And then we just started driving the rents. We ended up renovating 50% of the units, and that $200K that we borrowed got us to where we needed to be. We stabilized the asset. 2 years later, we bought it for 1.1. 2 years later, we exited at 3.1, took all those gains and did a 1031 exchange.
So you made $2 million. Your portion of that, were you equal thirds on your partnership there?
Yes.
Okay, so you made $600,000 or $700,000.
Yeah, and then rolled that into we did a TIC, tenants in common. So when you do a 1031 exchange for your listeners, it's typically an all or nothing thing. But if you set up what's called a tenants in common through an attorney, you can go individually in 1031 into your individual deals. And that's what I did.
Got it.
And I rolled that into a luxury single family home in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Now you're starting to play the luxury game.
Yeah.
Because you probably had enough experiments with Section 8. Right?
Yeah, I like to get the newer stuff now. But you know what I did? I was doing the short-term rental stuff along the way as well. And that stuff was doing really well. And so I thought, I want to go do a luxury short-term rental in Scottsdale. So I did a 1031, bought a $2.4 million luxury property in Scottsdale, 1.3 acre lot. It had a nice guest house, 7,600 square feet. And I put about $700,000 into a full reno on that. Bought it for 2.4. 9 months later, it appraised at 4.89. And that thing is going to do $700,000 this year.
Wow.
in gross revenue.
Wow.
And so just, for your listeners, the takeaway is like just in a matter of like a couple years, I turned that $300,000 401k into an 11 unit building in Cincinnati where I pulled all my money back out, did a 1031 exchange from the 32 unit building into this luxury single family that's worth 4.89, spitting off $700,000 in cash a year.
So 700,000, you're calling that gross revenue. Is that
gross.
Also your net profit?
Net, it does about 240.
Okay. So $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
Got it.
And with the cost segregation study, you're not paying taxes on that money.
I know. I love that. We should actually talk about that for a second because whether you're buying real estate or you're buying an office building or whether you're buying a jet, you have all of these benefits that a lot of people just don't know about. You know, the government last year, they basically said, hey, if you still buy a jet last year, anything Section 179, you can do 100% write-off in the year of the acquisition. And now this year it's at 80%. And next year it'll be 60. And then if we get a Republican president, it'll probably bump back to 100.
Agreed.
So there are some things I'd like to buy. And I'm like, I can wait just a minute because these things, bring millions of dollars in cash into my account. It's worth just actually timing, right? So it's advanced strategizing. For those that don't understand, when you get into the multifamily game, you're going to depreciate a property over 27 and a half years. And that's the government just basically says, hey, we know that this house is going to dilapidate. We know, and let's back up even further. Real estate is infrastructure to this country. And so the largest tax breaks come to the owners of real estate. The Constitution was set up from day one that if you were a property owner, you would get the biggest tax benefits. And the biggest tax benefit today that translates into is they say, well, your property is going to need to be replaced slowly over time because the carpet wears out, the paint's going to wear out. We know the studs and other things maybe aren't, but we'll allow you to depreciate the entire premise over 27 and a half years. They have this thing called accelerated depreciation. And where you can basically pay to have someone do a study that might cost you $500 to $10,000, depending on the size of the project. And what they can do is say, hey, we can generally give you 7 to 10 years of that tax depreciation in the first year loan. And so I do have a strategy for going and buying certain assets. Yeah. And it's just like, if this is a $3 million building, and if I can write off $1 million of it in the first year, and if I'm at a maximum tax bracket, that's going to save me $400,000 or $500,000. So real estate really is so you've been playing the game smart because you keep rolling everything forward and deferring taxes.
100%. We get cost segregation studies on all the properties. And like you alluded to, I call it a phantom loss. What other vehicles out there do you get this phantom loss? And, it's funny because where I came from, 11 years government employee, I paid the highest taxes. Literally 50% of everything I made went to taxes. I paid 38% to the Fed, 10% to the state of California, and then you throw in the Social Security tax, and it's about 50%. And here's my biggest takeaway, Kris, looking back. When I cashed out my 401k to do my first deal, everyone told me it was too risky. Friends, family, coworkers told me it was too risky. Looking back, my biggest takeaway is this. All those risks that people allude to are real, so put some weight on them. But on the other side of the balance scale is another risk, and it's this. I could be 80 years old one day, laying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, kicking myself, because I never fucking tried anything in life. How about that risk? Yeah. That's a risk too that a lot of people don't.
The risk of doing nothing is the greatest risk, right? The failure to participate. It's interesting because society, it's done such a great job. I mean, people are stupid when it comes to money, just because there's no financial education. If you're financially educated, you have to go out and get it your own. You're not going to find it in the school system. You're not going to find it in a university model. You're not going to find it from an employer. So there's no version of higher learning along the path that actually says, hey, do you know what a budget is?
Right.
Like, do you know the difference between being a reckless spender and frugal and right in the middle becoming an investor that actually has a shot? And so the greatest risk is if you do nothing, you'll never get your shot. You'll never, you're guaranteed to never be rich. You're guaranteed to never actually be well off. But you're also guaranteed to not lose money. And that's the risk that people are banking on. They're like, well, it may not go up and it may not get me where I want to be. I'll ignore that because no one's saying that either. I'm like, how come no one is doing the math and telling you in 5th grade you acquired the mathematical skills to see that your rate of accumulation is never going to be what you want at retirement? Like, how come no one is throwing that in your face? And there's just too many of them that are lemmings. There are too many people that are in the zombie apocalypse that just refuse to look at the very, very basic math.
Dude, I get so many people every day that say, man, I hate my job. I want to do what you do. I'm like, cool. Well, let's start doing it. Let's put a plan in place. You can quit your job and start doing this. And like, well, I don't want to give up my job. I'm like, okay, well, am I hearing you right? I'm like, you don't want to give up something that you already say that you hate for something that you want. How does that make any sense?
It doesn't. So
You can't have both.
you can't have both.
You got to pick one.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're now getting out there with this message because you got your own podcast. What's it called?
The Rich Summers Report.
Okay.
Yeah, just launched it this year, and it's been great, man. It's been fun. I've had a lot of cool guests on, Grant Cardone, Tariq El-Moussa, to name a few, but it's been fun, man, and it's been a great way to connect, as you know. I mean, just the amount of guests that you can connect with in person, and you never know what those opportunities will lead to down the road.
Okay, so now I'm going to mess with you. Can I do that?
Let's do it, man.
All right, so
You'll never offend me.
well, I'll share with you my greatest regret. You may not even care, but my biggest regret is I spent a decade in real estate before I realized that being the real estate guy is also a risk. Because, yeah, I can get my money to grow. I can get some good ROIs, but guess what I can't get? 1,000% ROIs, 5,000%, 10,000%. I became aware of this game called private equity and basically buying and selling companies, owning companies. And while the internet, largely thinks that I'm this real estate guy because I've done a couple $1 billion in deals and transactions, it's not the real estate that is making me my money. My real estate, like by the end of my life, I'll totally be, I think mathematically a billionaire in the game, but it's kind of a slow path, right? Like you look at it, you've started in 2019, so you're in your 4th year, and you've taken that, what you had in a 401k, and you've grown it to a net worth of $8 million. Bro, that is so impressive. And so now you can do some math and you'll get more aggressive. And the reality is if you play another decade in the game, you could have a net worth of 50 million. You maybe have a net worth of 100 million. But to go beyond that, there's a different game out there. And real estate at the end of the day is kind of a simple game, right? Like it's not rocket science, it's not tech, it's dirt. It's dirt, it's buildings, and it's knowing how to calculate a handful of coefficients and ratios. Like it doesn't require an intelligent mathematical mind. I think it's driven mostly by motivation, a certain level of financial intelligence, but it's hunger driven. And I think the real problem that we're talking about here with these 401k mindseted people is that they're scared of leaving security, even if they could build a better life for themselves. And I think real estate is largely a game of motivation more than anything else, because I don't think it's a ton of skill. There's definitely some skill associated with it, but getting in the private equity space, that's a challenging one.
They say 90% of millionaires come from real estate,
Yes.
and 100% of billionaires come from private equity.
Yes.
That's a powerful thing.
Yeah, so that's why, years ago I started getting into the transacting of businesses, and it's actually a very similar game to real estate. You just have to know the essentials of how to grow a business. What's up, Kris Krohn here. I am pausing my own podcast to make sure that you have my cell phone number. Because as you're listening and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could text Kris and ask him a real estate question or a business question, a marriage question, a health question, I got news for you. The phone number is right here. It's 385-217-3477. Save this in your phone and literally start texting me right now. Just drop your name and say, hey, Kris, it's whoever you are, and ask me a simple question. Let's go. So I'm kind of curious, like when you look to your future, when you zoom kind of 10 years into the future, are you the guy that's worth $100 million through real estate, or do you think at any point you ever get into, M&A?
Yeah, so I really want to get into picking up more small businesses and that sort of thing. So a couple things that we do right now. So I got a fund in the boutique hotel space. So we're raising private capital to buy tired boutique hotels. We're fixing them up. And then I'm getting into some other stuff as well. So one of my companies is a property management company. So we're managing short-term rentals and boutique hotels remotely in 10 markets right now around the country. Just launched an online education business. But I guarantee you, Kris, I want to get into picking up a lot of small businesses moving forward. When you look at all the baby boomers that are retiring over the next 7 years and all these small businesses they have,
big wealth transfer,
boutique hotels as well. There's the greatest transfer of wealth in American history is going to go down over the next 7 years. I want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Me too. I'm having a lot of fun in it right now. So what's interesting is your podcast gets out there and your social media grows. Like in my world, I probably get 50 opportunities a week of people throwing companies at me saying, do you have some money? Do you have some cash flow? Do you want to be my advisor? Like, can you participate? And so it's interesting. 2 years ago, I set up a team and I just said, your guys' job is just to evaluate 1,000 plus companies a year. And every year they find me 10. So like 1%. And they have to have $1 billion plus potential.
Okay.
They have to do something not innovative, but disruptive to the planet. They have to change an industry in the way that it's viewed and seen. And that means that they have to create massive value. And I said, you find something like that, you bring that to me. And so I've been playing in that space, and I don't have track record yet to talk about all of that, but the things that I've seen and what we've experienced and the growth there, it's starting to make real estate look adorable.
So are you partnering with operators that are expert in that given field?
Usually.
And then what are you bringing to the table?
So on my side, I bring a team of advisors. So on all of my companies, I own a few hundred. I've got 25, probably 30 key advisors that I pluck from all of these industries that are kind of the best of the best of the best in their niche. So it's a multi-million-dollar payroll. And I basically roll them up and I say, hey guys, I'm going to have you help me advise all these other companies that we're bringing on. It's gonna zap 10 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and an hour there, and I'll share in all the winnings with all of you. I created a profit share model. And what I do is I basically take some of the smartest minds. So we're talking about, chief legal. I've got attorney general from the state of Utah, or I've got CEOs that have 9-figure exits. I've got COOs and marketing officers and people that are really good in their niche. And I just bring them all together and say, okay, here's the new project.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sick you on it, and I want you to grow this thing. And so I'll step into a deal, and then I'll do that. I'll also provide infrastructure. There's a lot of companies that need capital, so I'll also venture fund and bring them some of the money that they need. And so it's some money, it's some infrastructure, and then it's advisory board.
Yeah, business architecture. And then I'm sure you know how to market and drive traffic too.
Yeah.
I love that, man.
Well, I look for synergies that also really make sense. It's like, I can wink my pinky on this thing, and we'll blow that thing up. And so, synergies that make sense, right? And things that aren't necessarily random.
Yeah.
Although I'm trying to get into as many industries as possible and as much tech as possible.
Which company, as of recently, that you've got into, are you most excited about?
Geez, I've got one that just hit MVP, went to market, and we are making a splash.
What do you guys do?
The company's called Thatch.
Okay.
It's in supply chain. And what it does is, if you take a look at the largest box train resellers, you take a look at Walmart and Home Depot, these companies are basically warehousing all these brands. And what they do is they have a split pay model that says the moment someone checks out and swipes their credit card, we're going to get our cut, you're going to get our cut. So they're actually doing something the way that supply chain doesn't do. Like supply chain says, I built a thing, I ship it to my retailer in all the locations, and then I have to wait on PO for 3 to 5 months. And then whether they successfully sold the product or not, I'll get paid. So what we're doing is we're basically taking split pay and we're bringing it to the masses, and we're enrolling all these companies, and these brands are pumped. They're like, I don't have business intelligence in running my company. So we're giving them AI that is telling them how to run their company, saying, only send 10 units to this store, but send 100 to that store, and send 12 to this store. And as they sell off the shelf, you'll get paid immediately your cut. And so now it's starting to take, if you've ever had an inventory business, AR, accounts receivable, will kill you when you're waiting months to actually get paid, because you can keep spinning up capital, producing product and shipping out, but getting paid too slow that you're getting buried alive. This is like Dell Computer. There was a multi-billion-dollar company that had account receivables at 24 days. And every quarter they were losing money because of their receivables. And Michael Dell actually challenged them to get it down to, at first he said, do it under 10 days. Build a computer and ship it out upon order, within 6 days, 2 days. Eventually got it down to 4 hours. And what that did is it made the company so flush with capital. So it's about efficiency, it's about speed of capital, and it's about data that informs you how many units you're supposed to build and make and where you're supposed to send them based on predictive forecasting. That's a $33 trillion industry just waiting to be disrupted, and no one's touching it.
How long do you think that one's going to take to get ready for a nice exit?
Not long.
Okay.
No. So on that one, since we released a couple of weeks ago, we've got companies lining up, and a lot of these companies are kind of mid-level, doing between 5 and 20 million in sales a year. They'll pay 10% right off of the top of gross to have access to this technology.
Yeah. So
I enroll a company doing 20 million. That's 2 million to the bottom line. And that $2 million, on a high margin business equates to a 47x multiple. So
wow.
I think that company in the next 5 years, I think that's a $100 billion company.
I love that.
Like, I think it touches every product. It touches everything in supply chain. So the next move is to basically get some market proof, and then, raise 50 quick million on venture, and then go huge on the AI. That's like the second phase, is to build in the predictive technology where everyone will want it, I think, just from the standpoint of, tell me how to run my company. What am I supposed to make? When am I supposed to make it? Where am I supposed to send it? You do that, that's gonna change that entire game.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a company. I'm like,
and I love that.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's like real estate is great, right? It's like the best backbone.
Yeah.
But good deal, 2, 3, 4x.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have that 100x exit, right? And so I think with real estate, it's like, with all of it, it gives you security, it gives you the cash flow, it gives you tax benefits, but it allows you to go take risks and pick your spots on these higher risk businesses.
100%. So that's why that's why like a job is like the ultimate risk, because you're guaranteed to never get what you want by retirement. Real estate elevates you from that because you can land double-digit ROI all day long in real estate. You're doing better than that on some of your deals.
Yeah.
And when you do that, that elevates you to now building wealth in years as opposed to decades or never. But when I think you go to the private equity space, that's where it's like, oh, now my real estate that's what it did for me. It built a foundation of money. We're getting into private equity. It's like, okay, this is where you can build like fortunes wicked fast. And it's fun.
Do you do anything in the peptide space with like testosterone and all that?
I play in it, but I actually don't have any companies that are in that one. I just sold one company off that was in that space. Yeah.
Dude, I'm 38 and I'm just now getting into like learning about like the importance of lifting heavy weights, eating high protein diets, building lean muscle. I'm just now learning that kind of stuff. It's like, it's weird. Society doesn't teach us that in school.
No, but I'll tell you, when you get money figured out, that is the next game that everyone wants to play, is just like, shoot, I have the money now. I want to live a long life.
Yes.
And I want a quality of life because medicine's going to keep me alive for a really long time, even if I'm unhealthy.
Dude, everything, man. It gives you more confidence as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It gives you everything. It gives you more energy, all that sort of stuff. And like you said, like I want to live longer. And so I started to think about those things. And now I'm finally at 38 prioritizing my health. And dude, it's been amazing, man. It's awesome.
It's good to have the time for it, right? What does your schedule as an entrepreneur look like right now?
Yeah,
I mean, you've done a ton in the last 4 years to build a net worth from nothing to 8 million.
So we get an office and a podcast studio in downtown San Diego. I live about 4 blocks from the office. So
dude, are you going crazy living in California, being a success? When you start making money, you're like, dang. I know the real estate is avoiding a lot of your taxation, but can you just comment on that for a quick sec?
So California's not cheap. So I live in a penthouse downtown, 35th floor, overlooking the bay and everything. I rent where I live, and I pay $12,000 a month for rent. So it's not cheap. So anyways, I usually wake up around 7 o'clock. I go straight into the gym. I get a nice workout in, and then I shower, go to the office. I try to get to the office around 9:30. Usually have a couple meetings. Mondays and Tuesdays are typically front loaded with a lot of meetings. Wednesdays are our content day. So we'll do 3 podcasts typically on Wednesdays. We do a lot of networking events as well. So host meetups on Wednesdays typically. And then Thursdays, I like to kind of keep open for like creative stuff. And then Fridays, I usually keep pretty clear. That's kind of the schedule in a nutshell. And I try to do it all in that time period. But to your point, man, I was working 6 days a week, 56 hours a week. Yeah. I would get 3 weeks vacation a year, and I had to plan my vacation time a year in advance. And dude, weekends, holidays, nights, I was doing a lot of working, and it's like now I get to control my time, and it's a beautiful thing, man. But I think the best part about real estate is like, everyone can win. There's so much freaking money out there in the world that everyone can win. You just got to go get it. Yeah.
So let me ask you a weird question then. Everyone has a why, something that motivates and drives them. And there's a lot of people that get in the real estate game that just say, I'm going to play for X period of time. I'm going to hit my number. I'm going to sell out. I'm done. Like, do you have an end goal in the game that you're playing?
It's funny because the why changes as we go.
Of course.
And the goal always changes as we go. People always ask me like, oh, what's your 5-year goal? What's your 10-year goal? I'm like, I'm not even thinking more than a year out, because what I think I want 5 years from now and 10 years from now is going to be different when I get there. Yeah. And if it's not different, that means I'm not growing.
Yeah.
And so if you'd have told me 5 years ago when I was doing air traffic, if I ever thought I'd be doing this, I would have thought you were crazy.
Okay, so I want to then go backwards. I want to go backwards in time then, because I want to see how the goal has shifted. When you decided that you wanted to get into real estate, in your wildest imagination, what at that point was your goal? It's like, I got $200,000 that I can pull out of my 401k. Like, what do I want? Because that world, that employment world brainwashes us into thinking, if I can hit X amount of money, then I'm done and I never have to work again. What was your first iteration on that?
I literally thought with the first deal, let me just pick up a $1,200 a month in passive income, and let me just prove out the model. That's all I was thinking. And I thought, if I can eventually get to $10,000 a month in passive income, it might take me 5 years, and then I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to retire and sit on the beach.
If I can stick with it for 5 years and get to $10K a month, but on the first deal, how much do you end up making a month?
About $2,100 a month.
So not $1,200. You almost doubled it. You were at $2,100. On the second deal, after you did that turnaround before you sold it, what were you getting your cash flow up on that?
That one we weren't taking much cash flow.
Okay.
But it was the nice exit that really gave me.
That was a $2 million exit. Yeah.
Yep. But along the way, I did some no money down loans and bought some short-term rentals. And through those short-term rentals, I got them both for no money down in San Diego. Those things were printing money. So those things were doing anywhere from $14,000 to $18,000 a month together in passive income.
So the question is, when did you quit then? When did you leave the job?
So literally, I thought it would take me 5 years. Once I committed and I did that first deal, I literally punched out of there in about 15 months.
Oh my gosh.
And at that time,
I love that so much.
People told me I was fucking crazy. They're like, you're going to walk away from a guaranteed pension. You're 14 years away from a pension.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you know where I'm going to be 14 years from now if I go all in on this?
Yes.
And that moment I quit and went all in on this.
Was that scary to walk away from the pension though? Because everyone was saying, dude, you're 11 years in and you can never get that back.
It was. All those steps along the way were scary. Cashing out the 401k, buying the first deal, raising money for the first time, quitting the job. Like all that stuff was scary because everyone told me not to do it. And I'm just so lucky that I didn't listen to those folks. And instead, I got around big players that were actually doing it. And I took their advice instead of going to people that never bought a real estate before, had never been an entrepreneur before.
Who are some of your like motivations today? Like
today.
Like who are the people that are driving you? You read a couple of books. You read some Kiyosaki.
There's 6 folks that I study.
Okay.
And I think it's important for any entrepreneur to always be studying people that are above you so you can model their game. And those people might change as you grow, right? So early on, it was different. But today, it's about 6 people. So I would say it's Grant Cardone, Alex Ramosi, Patrick Bet-David, yourself, Ryan Pineda, and Pace Morby.
Wow.
And I study those folks because, I can relate to you guys.
Yeah.
And you guys are all doing big stuff in the space. You guys are all well-rounded people. It's not just about making money, but it's making sure other people win as well. Yeah. And, driving over here with your driver today, I mean, she spoke so highly of you. She's like, dude, I've known Kris for 5 years. And he's like, what'd she say, Parker? Like, best dude ever, literally. Right. And I want to be around those people. I want to model my game after those people. And I literally study what these people do. I watch all their content, and that's how I do it.
That's cool, man.
You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being an inspiration.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So, goals today. Back then, it was if I had 10K, I could leave. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the next iteration of that? Yeah.
So I want to own $1 billion of real estate. Okay. Obviously, there's going to be some companies along the way, but the ultimate goal is to own $1 billion of real estate. Yeah. Right now, we're buying boutique hotels. It's just multifamily is oversaturated. Short-term rentals are definitely oversaturated.
Yes.
But if you marry those two, you have a boutique hotel. And in the $10 million and under space, there's just a lot of mom and pop sellers who own these hotels for 30, 40 years. They haven't been renovated in decades. They're not utilizing any modern technology. They're not marketing on social media. They're not marketing on Airbnb, Vrbo, all these platforms. And so there's a huge opportunity to come in and buy these boutique hotels. We'll operate these hotels remotely with our management arm. It allows us to bring the innkeeper suite online for additional revenue, and then we can eliminate the biggest expense of these properties by eliminating the payroll of having a manager on site, and we'll just force our valuation that way. We did the first one a year ago. We proved out the model. We picked it up $1.5 million from a mom and pop seller. It was beachfront, 10 units in Northern California. He had owned the property for 18 years, never did more than $180,000 in gross revenue. We're about to do $700,000 in the first year. Yep. We took the property for 1.5 a year ago. It just appraised for 4.5.
Wow.
And so now we're going all in on the model. We just picked up a 24-unit boutique hotel in San Diego. We started a fund, and now we're about to tie up a 45-unit boutique hotel up in Northern California that's underperforming.
Dude, killing it, man. Killing it. Yeah. Got a question for you on the kind of people that should pursue your path and the people that shouldn't. Because I'll just tell you, for me, when I first started my journey, I thought everyone should do what I'm doing. And I watched as some people would do it and succeed. And then there's some people where it was like watching a train wreck. And I'm like, oh crap, not everyone should do this. Like I have the ability to inspire and motivate people to get off their ass and do something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, some of these people, once Kris Krohn ain't there, they're back on their ass and they're not doing the do, or they don't know how to raise the capital. There's skill sets that you had motivation drive you to figure out that are actually complicated. Putting your own money into a deal, that's easy. Getting someone else to put money in the deal, you have to have some level of track record. You have to have stacked the deck and gotten some of the dominoes to fall down in your favor. Who are the people that should do what you're doing, and who are the people that shouldn't?
Yeah, so I think you got to have a certain level of risk tolerance. So if you have zero risk tolerance and you're afraid to do a lot of things, probably not going to be a good fit. But I think the number one skill that you need, and I tell everyone this is the number one skill that you could learn as a kid growing up, is sales. If you know how to sell, you know how to market.
Where did you learn sales though?
So I had sales back.
How? You were air traffic control.
So before I got into air traffic, I was selling cell phones at the mall. I was the guy at the kiosk slanging cell phones to everyone before everyone.
So
had
you
cell
weren't afraid
phones.
of rejection.
No.
You had built up some mental fortitude.
But I used
on
to be a pretty shy kid. Like growing up, I used to be pretty quiet and shy. But that job forced me to get out of my comfort zone, be willing to get rejected, say hi to strangers, and learn how to hustle. And then from there, I went on to sell cars. So my coworkers, I did really well at the sales there. They said, "Hey, come sling cars with us. You'll make more money." So I became a really good sales rep slinging Nissans in San Diego, and that was before the air traffic. So I had the background in sales.
Why did you? I mean, if you were doing well in sales, how did you get into a government deal?
Do you want to hear a funny story? So I wanted to sell commercial real estate. I was like, dude, I want to sell things that are going to pay high commission. And I knew it was commercial real estate. So I graduated college in 2008. I interviewed at two commercial brokerages, CB Richard Ellis and Grubb and Ellis. And they both said, "Hey, we love your hustle. We think you'd be great, but this is not the right time to get into the industry." And they pulled the internship positions. This is 2008. Everything was coming down.
And
timing. I found myself on a car lot wondering, what am I going to do with my life? And I stumbled across the job as an air traffic controller.
And it was security.
It was security at the time where there was a lot of volatility. And so I did that for 11 years. And 8 years in, I woke up and I said, whoa, I better figure this out now. And I was 33 at the time. I'm 38 now. But looking back, those sales skills translates over to everything I'm doing today. So I would say the number one skill that you should learn if you want to be an entrepreneur, a successful real estate investor, is sales.
So bottom line is, if you have zero chill on risk, and also if you don't have experience in sales, those two things might hurt you.
Probably not going to be in alignment.
Got it.
Now that doesn't mean that you can't do it. Go get a sales job. You
Yep.
can change those things. I was a quiet kid, and I forced myself to get good at sales. And everything we do is marketing, sales.
So anyone that's listening to this that's like, no, I'm born shy and that's my identity and it's unchangeable, you would say
that's not true at all. No. I was that quiet, shy kid as a kid growing up. Go out there, start shaking your hands. The more conversations you have, the more comfortable you are doing it. I mean, I remember the first time I did a in-person podcast. I was nervous. But like now I'm like, no,
it's interesting. So I served a 2-year mission for my church between high school and college, and living in Germany for 2 years, speaking a foreign language and talking to people about God that wanted nothing to do with God after that. Still, Second World War was fresh enough, still generations later. It toughened me up because it was nothing but rejection is what it felt like. And then I remember one day I said, you know what, Kris, this isn't going to work unless you can develop some charisma. And I'm like, and I was the shy kid. And I'm like, I can't do that. That you got it or you don't.
Dude, it's funny because Vivian was driving us over here and she goes, yeah, I've known Kris for 5 years. He used to be a lot more quiet and shy back then, but always a nice guy. But now he's just so much louder, but in a good way, like nicest guy. She goes, if you want to feel good about yourself, go hang out with Kris. Like, I fucking love that, man.
Yeah, no,
I love that.
She's a sweetheart. But no, charisma was developed. Getting out of the shyness. And I think for anyone listening, there's like, oh, I've got some personality defect that will keep me from doing this. I'm like, well, no, that's actually belief driven. It's actually not identity driven.
And why do you think that is? That you can convert from being a little bit more quieter to like just more and more charisma as you grow? Is it just a little confidence each win?
Not necessarily.
Along the way?
I think there's an underlying paradigm that I subscribe to that says there are those in life that resist and there are those that in life that embrace. So those that resist, they love to say no to everything. And then those that love change, they're the ones that are the transitional characters that can become anything. And when I got my hands on that knowledge, I said, well, I think I want to be a transitional character. So I just started programming myself that I love change. Change is natural for me. Change is good for me. Anytime I want something that I'm not getting, I'm going to have to change to get it. So become really comfortable leaving the comfort zone. And that just puts a perspective on me that just says, hey, whatever medications you're on because your doctors tell you have an illness, I'm like, I don't know if that's true. I think everything's belief driven, which
mindset.
Is basically, it's mindset. So it's all psychology. So it just means you can be whatever you want to be.
I didn't learn this till like 3 years ago, but happiness stems from growth and progress. And so the second I stopped growing, the second I stopped progressing, I'm like, dude, I'm getting bored. And so without change, there will be no growth. And I think for all those folks that are afraid to do things, it's like, no, change is what keeps you happy. And so I'll never stop growing.
So I got a final question for you before we wrap up. If I've been a mentor to you, you might want to pick my brain on a question. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. And if we could end with one question that you want to ask me.
I would say, you were at where I'm at one point, right? Yes. Where you kind of proven out the model, got a little bit of success, and you're like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. I got a team now. We got about 10 of us on the team, and we're rocking and rolling. Got the podcast going. I'm connected with some big folks like you and Grant Cardone, starting to get a little attention, on social, and really we're proving out the systems. And so now I'm like, okay, how do we get better, and how do we do a lot more of this, and how do we reach more people? What would you say would be the number one key there?
I'll give you 3. I think as hard as you left air traffic control to go into real estate, I would go just as hard into social. So I wouldn't dabble in it. I would go into a mastery level of go as hard as you can, because whether you have an $8 million net worth or an 80 million doesn't matter. People are ready, and I can feel it from talking to you. People are ready to listen to you, but that means that they have to then be able to find you. So I would go number 1 as hard as you can on social. Number 2 is exit your company. Every function that you perform in your own company, stop. If you can make it do what it is doing without you, now you're a Jedi. And then number 3, get into a new space that lights you up, and you'll be stacking a different level of mastery on you that will expand your uniqueness so that your followers will have new reasons to thrive learning and growing with you.
So I think my highest and best use is marketing, going on podcasts like this, doing social promoting. Now, when you say delegate, do that stuff, and then find something else that excites me, what would an example of that be?
I can't tell you. You're going to have to find it for yourself.
But it'd be like another business realm, or what?
It could. It has.
And should it wrap around with my other companies?
No, I'm not going to point you on that one. The most important thing you can do is exit and give yourself, pretend like you're never going to go to work again, and within weeks, you're going to find it. And when you find it, it should be 5 to 10 times bigger than the current game that you're playing right now. And that's what's going to grow you to your maximum potential. Rich, thank you so much for being here today, brother. Kris. It was great to connect with you, dude. I'm excited for who you are. I'm excited for who you're connecting with and the lives that you're touching. Keep rocking, keep winning, keep being epic, and everybody else, we'll see you on the next Kris Krohn Show.
Appreciate you, Kris.